Díobh agus bhuair géad fáilte. Hello and welcome to this Leadership Cluster Celebration event. My name is Mary Nihill and I'm the National Director of the Centre for School Leadership. As you know, we had planned to gather in Athlone Community College last April to celebrate the many leadership projects that have been completed as a result of our engagement in this initiative. But unfortunately, COVID-19 didn't allow that to happen. However, the team was very anxious to celebrate the great work done by you since November 2018. And as a result, they have put together this virtual celebration event. Firstly, I want to congratulate all 100 schools who engaged in this initiative. I would also like to acknowledge the investment made by the Department of Education and Skills in facilitating the many projects. For us in CSL, what stood out was the level of collaboration that was involved in this project and the collaboration that emerged throughout the project. We saw tremendous collaboration not only within schools, where leaders at every level in the school worked together, but also between schools. And indeed between schools from different sectors, such as preschools, primary schools and post-primary schools. We also saw tremendous collaboration at system level, with the supports being offered by our support services, our education centres, and the many business and third level colleges who engaged with us. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the work done by our CSL facilitators and by the cluster coordinators who worked together to bring these projects to fruition. I hope that you enjoy this virtual celebration of what is best in Irish school leadership. I now take great pleasure in introducing to you Professor Patricia Mannix-McNamara from the University of Limerick, who will address you. Gura míle maith agaibh.
Hello to you all. My name is Patricia, and I know some of you and others of you are colleagues that I'm hoping to get to meet in the future. I would have loved to be meeting you in person today, but the pandemic has put paid to that, and that's such a shame. We were very much looking forward to being part of this celebration, but I look forward to meeting you in the future. For those of you who don't know me, I work in the University of Limerick, where I'm the Head of Education, and I'm also the Course Director for the Postgraduate Diploma in School Leadership, or what is commonly known as the PDSL. In reality, I am a post-primary teacher who's in exile in the university system, and our profession is one that I'm deeply passionate about, and I'm hoping over the next few moments that you will actually pick that up from me. But before I begin my talk, I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to both the Centre for School Leadership and to the Department of Education and Skills for this opportunity to share some of my insights about leadership. And I want to share these with you as you celebrate this wonderful achievement, because your leadership clusters are testament to your belief in your profession and to your leadership. They're testament to the importance of you leading both yourself and others. And they are also evidence of the vision and support of the Department of Education and Skills and the CSL, without whose support this would not have been possible. But more on that later. First, I'm going to preface what I'd like to say to you with a reminder for us all that some of you may have heard before, that when stars actually go supernova, they're responsible for creating many of the elements of the periodic table, and the scientists among us will be delighted to hear us remind us of that. But also they're responsible for creating the elements that actually make up the human body. So in essence, we're all made of star stuff. Now that's not bad for leaders to remind ourselves of now and again. But this has a more important metaphorical purpose for us as education leaders, because it reminds us that we are part of something universal, something far greater than our individual selves. And as education leaders, we form part of a greater system, a macro system that has an influence far greater than any one individual life. A bit existential, you might say. But the next time that your gaze turns skyward, it's a reminder that you're part of something greater and with richness of purpose. My purpose for the next few moments is to share insights about leadership, to encourage you to reflect on your own leadership, and to think about where leadership is evident around you every day. Schools are leadership-rich environments, and sometimes we don't see that part of ourselves or of our organisations. So today, hopefully, we're going to spend a few moments thinking about that. So much is changing, thankfully, and how we now speak about educational leadership, and that is most certainly not before time. So I'm hoping to help you move your thinking forward, to reflect a little bit, and to celebrate your leadership clusters today. Thankfully, the directions or trends of what we know about leadership are changing quite considerably now. We're moving far away from the traditional great man theory of leadership, and this theory of leadership was characterised by perceptions that you're a born leader, that you have specific characteristics that make you a leader, and that these cannot be learned. That leaders are charismatic, that they have the charm and the power to bring people with them, and that you either have that way of drawing in or you don't. That the leaders are solo players. They are the boss who decides, who controls, who leads from the front, who directs the troops, aka the staff or the team. And that the leader holds all the power and all the decision making. And here in these traditional understandings of leadership, you will see that the energy, the locus, is completely vested in the personhood of somebody with specific characteristics or traits that make them the leader. And then we would have seen in more recent times discussions around concepts such as instructional leadership, which most of, if not all of you, are already familiar with, but it's got a strong focus on leading learning, and that's important. Democratic leadership, which is driven from an equality agenda and pushes for democratic decision-making within organisations. How realistic that actually is in practice is open to question, I must say, even though I'm a keen proponent of equality and democracy. But in terms of where we get into difficulty in leadership is when we espouse something and then we don't deliver on it. So these are some of the challenges and one of the big critiques of democratic leadership, for example. Then we've also heard a lot about transformational leadership recently, and transformational leadership very much emphasises the motivations, the skills, the symbolic behaviours, the vision, even the morality of the leader of the organisation. And you will notice that these are very much vested in individuals. And these type of focus on leadership has led to a drive for change management, which would have been very common in the 80s and 90s particularly, and in the early 2000s, but was still mostly individual in focus, very much about the particular leader whose job it was to change the culture of the school. But it did little really to change the lived experience of leadership culture for those who were not sitting in the chair. And this is the challenge for us in leadership, which is to understand that it's not all about the individual. The other thing we need to say in relation to this, if you're thinking about leadership, is that's a lot to carry on one shoulder, when there are the skills and capacities in many others to be able to move an organisation forward far more productively. And that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. So leadership is not just about individuals and how they act, as you're picking up from me, but it's about fostering a shared culture, a shared decision making. It's not about a set of skills that you have or you don't have, and skills can be learned. It's more about the disposition and a philosophy for the organisation itself, and that's when we get to the heart of changing culture in the organisation, and about shared inclusion, about how do we even include the voices of those that may challenge us more, that sometimes we don't always want to hear, but how do we foster an ethical climate of leadership within our schools? There's been a lot of talk in the literature in the past maybe 2 decades about separating the concept of leadership and management. Management are the day-to-day pieces that have to be done, the timetables that need to be done, the hours that need to be done, the goals that need to be met, the tasks and goals that need to be set, etc., etc., etc. And leadership is the space where you can then get into that sort of affective piece where you can build the capacity of others and engage in the empowerment and strategic visioning of your school. But any of you who work in schools know you cannot separate these two. They are inseparable. And so while a lot of time is being spent differentiating the traits of these two ways of working, school leaders know that these are two domains that you cannot separate and that you actually have to carry together in balance. Most of us, myself included, wouldn't mind leaving a lot of the managerial tasks behind, but they're part and parcel of what it means to be a leader. Making the tough decision, having the difficult conversation, trying to find solutions when there sometimes seems to be none around the daily tasks that need to be done, replacing staff members who are out ill at short notice, the pressures of all of these things that need to be done are daily tasks that school leaders grapple with every day. And sometimes they can take over and they can take more of our attention. The challenge is not to separate these two. The challenge is to balance them. And that takes a bit of time. There are certainly many ways of getting support around that, and I would really applaud the Centre for School Leadership in its endeavours around mentoring and around coaching, which I think have helped considerably in being able to bring back that balance in this type of work. But it's really important to understand that we don't really need to differentiate them. We need to hold them together in unison, but in balance. And I'm looking at the policy, looking at our schools, which I believe has been a game changer for us in terms of educational leadership in the country. And what I like about this is that there is a clearer focus on the development of effective and sustainable leadership. And what's also important is that the support is coming from the department behind that through these types of clusters, through these types of ground-up initiatives that you have been doing, where you are building the capacity in your teams and working across boundaries in your teams and evidencing really important and creative leadership. It's also about empowering ourselves and each other to take on and carry out leadership roles. And I'll talk about more of that in a few moments. But so what is leadership then? Well, Brené Brown talks about leadership as being anyone who takes the responsibility for finding the potential in people and in processes and having the courage to develop that potential. Who takes responsibility for finding potential in people and who has the courage to develop that potential. And if you think about it, it's kind of the definition of what's just happened with these clusters, where people have taken an idea, built their capacity around it, and have had the courage to draw people together into collaborative groups and to build potential in order to make an improvement in your school. And what we're talking about here is distributive leadership in action. Now, distributive leadership is a concept that's growing more and more in popularity, and it's certainly a form of leadership to which I would subscribe. However, I'm putting in a proviso that I don't believe there is a single perfect form of leadership. I think in many of the different theories and motivations behind leadership, there are one and many pieces that we can draw together, and we each lead from our own disposition and strength. So it's about building our strength, building that leadership muscle. So distributive leadership is a term that's used to describe leadership that is shared within, between, and across organisations. And that's what I've just seen in action with these leadership clusters. But what's really important here is that leadership is not understood as an entity or a person, but as a practice. It's leadership not about being just one person doing a role, not just one person holding responsibility, but it's a practice that is enacted through different actions. Distributive leadership places emphasis on our interactions, on our disposition and on how we are, rather than the role or the managerial action. So leadership in this model is not restricted only to those with formal leadership roles, but the influence and the agency for leadership are widely shared across the organisation, as has just happened with your clusters. So Brené Brown, on her work on leadership, reminds us that we have a lot of words for what counts as not good leadership. One thing is certain. When you work in an organisation where there is an absence of good leadership, boy, do you know about it. You feel it, your school feels it, your students feel it, and everybody is unhappy. There is a feeling, a culture, you can almost feel it when you walk into the building. It doesn't work. But what happens when good leadership is happening? Well, what we see is the empowerment of all of those we come in contact with, building the potential of others to see themselves as leaders in their classrooms, in their staff rooms, in their subject groupings, in their disciplinary areas, in their extracurricular activities, in whatever it is that they have the space within which to lead, we build that potential in them. Good educational leadership is about courage. It's about being able and willing to put our head above the parapet and to simply give it a try. It's about going and saying, I have this idea, will it work or won't it work? And one of the things that Brené Brown talks a lot about is about creating the space for people to fail. being able to fail. She talks about the gifts of imperfection and the importance of failure. We learn quite a bit from being successful. We learn a lot more when we reflect when we were unsuccessful. And so a good leadership creates a culture where it is okay not to be perfect, and it is okay for something to fail, and it is okay to pick yourself back up and go again. One of the mantras that we use in our doctoral program that I lead is that I say it's no sin to fall, it is to lie there. It's about getting back up, dusting yourself off and starting again. We learn from our mistakes. So it's really about saying it's okay when things don't go right. And as a leader, I'm not always going to get it perfect. As a matter of fact, I will say I get it wrong about as many times as I get it right. That's part of the journey. But most of all, it's about being able and being willing to collaborate. And good educational leaders really know the value of collaboration. In a profession where time is at a premium for us, and it really is, and I'm very, very conscious of what's happening in our profession at the moment, and it's very challenging to see how teachers are really under pressure. And I think the profession has been absolutely outstanding in meeting the challenges nationally, to see our children continuing to learn, seeing our teachers move and to be flexible and to do everything that has been done to keep children learning has been absolutely inspiring in our profession and something to be very, very proud of. But it has meant that we are very time poor. So the fact that these leadership clusters have really continued in that space is evidence of your commitment to working within and across boundaries. If we want to change education systems for the better, if we want to make them more positive and more sustainable, well, then we need to collaborate and we need to communicate across boundaries. This boundary crossing that these clusters has done is an important first step in making our schools more porous in terms of influence. And that should in turn positively impact change. I would hope that it will bring into our staff rooms more space and make them more dynamic environments for conversations about creative thinking. What if? Somebody somewhere for your cluster went, what if? And look where it has finished. And that is absolutely outstanding. So it's about creating the space for the what if. Formal school leaders need to actively promote innovation and creativity. And those of you that are here, you've had that experience. And so if you can now ripple that experience out to your other colleagues to see what they can do, what they can achieve with what if. That's really important. And formal school leaders welcome and celebrate individual and collective contributions and achievements. And that's what looking at our schools tells us we're supposed to be doing. And in this initiative, that is most certainly what we have been doing. If we want to change our education system for the better, we all need to lean into leadership. And this leaning in means changing the way we traditionally understand school leadership. It's not the principal, the deputy principals, the assistant principals, the post holders' jobs. It's actually all of ours. We need to see how we lead in our own space, how we use our own agency to achieve better experiences for our students, for each other, both at an individual and a systemic level. We're all about leading learning, even when we're making decisions at administrative level in schools. But in order to achieve this, we need to become unstuck from the way that we do things. In order to harness our energy and our innovation, of which you've all been a part, we need to unstick our thinking from the traditional way of doing things, and we need to ask a lot more, what if? Because it's a great first step towards changing the leadership culture in our schools for the better. We are seeing increasing levels of stress among teachers, increasing levels of burnout, exhaustion, and certainly this pandemic is not helping us in that regard. But I'm going to share an insight with you that I think is really important. We assume that burnout is all about workload, but it's actually not. When people have high workloads, they may become stressed. The workload may become unmanageable, and that needs to be addressed. But that can be addressed. Burnout is deeper. And burnout and exhaustion happens when we become stuck, when we lose our agency, when we lose our direction, when we lose our vision, and when we lose our sense that we can make a difference. That's when the burnout sets in. So the way to inure against this, or to have resilience against burnout, is not to take on more work, but it's certainly to work smarter, to work more cleverly, to work more collaboratively in projects that build our capacity and our potential and that increase our agency, our sense of having a voice and being able to affect a change. And that might seem like I'm talking at a tangent, but I'm not, because these leadership clusters are an example of how teachers are growing their agency within their profession and, without realizing it, are also growing our resilience. Was it difficult? I have no doubt. Was it a lot more work than you expected? I expect so. Was it worth it? Without a doubt. And that's the piece that we need to think about that type of agency that we're growing within ourselves, because that gives us our professional efficacy, our sense of ourselves, and it usually leads to further growth. There is no formula for leadership success, and that's the beauty of our work. You can be creative. I think that's what makes this particular area so exciting. We have the freedom, and I'm saying yes, we absolutely still do, to forge our own leadership cultures in our schools, to create spaces that are caring, that really listen, that are present to each other. And I often think about John O'Donoghue's work, the poem that he has that's actually on the tube in London at the moment, and it's about slowing down and really seeing and really being present. It's worth a read. But the other thing that I think is important for us all to remember is that we must lead in our own sphere, whether it's in our classroom, in our staff room, or if we're a formal school leader. We must lead with the same passion with which we want to be led ourselves. And I was chatting to somebody just this morning about this, and we were talking about how leaders, she's also a female leader in a higher education institution, and we talked about how you have to disappear yourself a bit. It's not about you. It's about building the capacity in the team so that they step into leadership themselves, and how exciting it is to watch that happen with the people around us. And that's one of the greatest gifts that you get back from really good leadership. If you're interested in being a school leader, or you're interested in leadership, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the person who's going to be the principal of your school. It means you lead in your own sphere, in your own space, and you set the tone and the culture in your own space. Parker Palmer, who I'm a huge fan of, and I'd like to think many of you might have read his work, in his book, The Courage to Teach, writes very clearly that we teach who we are. We teach our values, our disposition, our worldview. And I would then take his concept and extend it and say, we lead who we are. With our values, with our disposition, with our courage, with our self-belief, and with our care for others. So schools, as I said to you at the beginning, are leadership-rich sites. It's all over the place. It's everywhere. Leadership is visible in the formal school leadership daily practices every day, the timetables, the daily running of the school, the talking to parents, the fixing problems, the making sure the lights are on and making sure the heating is on and making sure that it's all happening. It's also visible in how teachers lead learning in their classrooms. In that room every day, when you're with those students, it's visible in how you are engaging. But leadership was also evident in the thought leadership, the what if that led to the clusters that you have created. It's lived in the discussions that you've had with your cluster partners, with your peers, with your formal school leaders, and with your students. Leadership is given life in the actions that you and your cluster partners engaged with for your school's improvement. Leadership is given spirit in days like today, when we celebrate your current success and we look forward to your future ones. This type of leadership breathes life and creativity into your professional lives. It makes our profession a greater and a more life-enhancing space, and I applaud you for that. I cannot wait to see what is next with these clusters, because it's been a privilege to follow them from the very beginning, from the ideas to the fruition and to today. So I'm wishing you continued success with your leadership clusters. I'm looking forward to hearing more about them as the day goes on, and I wish you a great day.
My name is Dara Diver, and I am the coordinator of the project Next Steps Donegal. We have been working on it since November 2018. There are 4 schools involved, 1 special school, Little Angel School, and 3 secondary schools, St Unian's College, Errigal College and Mulroy College, all in County Donegal. The overall aim of the project was to create a resource for students with ASD transitioning from their schools and exploring the post-school options available to them. We explored the resources and post-school options available, points of contact, and the best practice for students, parents, teachers, and schools to be engaging with as they prepare for the transition process. We arranged a forum with some of the service providers and stakeholders to discuss our project and what we wanted to achieve. They each shared a range of options available to students, and not only did we learn about what they each facilitated, but they learned about what the other were doing through this forum arranged by us. We identified what we should be working on in advance of students leaving their current setting and shared experience and practice of what happens in our individual schools. Through this discussion forum, we gained an insight into the options available to our students with additional needs and the measures that can be put in place from the external facilitators to enable them to succeed. The project has allowed all teachers working within the cluster to develop leadership skills and capacity. Every teacher working on the project was working on promoting a culture of inclusion for their students and had already been planning on how best to support the students as they transition from their school. As teachers, we are all so familiar with putting the supports in place for our students to succeed, especially so with our students with additional needs. Links were created between the schools and practice was shared. Meetings were arranged at each of the schools to enable staff involved to see the layout and resources available and how they engage with student learning in each individual setting. All of the teachers involved were working to deliver equality of opportunity to all the students and to equip them with the skills and supports that would be required to succeed with all aspects of school life as they prepare for their transition. We were working to improve student learning and experience at school level and to ensure that this continued through the transition process to the next placement of the student. The project allowed us to critically analyse and evaluate our practice and promote a culture of collaboration with the other schools and stakeholders involved in the student transition and placement. It provided us the opportunity to ensure we each have systems and structures in place to meet the priority needs of our students as they transition from our schools. Personally, to include what I have already mentioned previously, I have gained a lot from working on this project. Through evaluation of my own practice in school and working with the students in my class, I have been enabled to engage with personal and collaborative reflection with the other parties involved. The project allowed the opportunity to develop relationships with other schools. Being able to build and develop the support network of teachers will stand to my practice and benefit all the teaching, learning, and leadership of my own school. I developed confidence in working in a collaborative project, hearing other opinions and viewpoints, challenging my own thinking, and to effectively communicate and liaise with all of the stakeholders involved. Organizational and administration skills were also developed through the circulation of emails, organization of meetings, and sharing of information. As coordinator, this project has empowered me to take on and carry out the leadership role from the outset and form the professional networks that will continue to develop as the project concludes. Finally, I would like to express thanks to all of the teachers and principals involved in each of the schools for their time and effort. Special thanks also to the Centre of School Leadership, the facilitators, LYIT, the HSC, all of which ensured the success of this project.
Hello, my name is Joe McAvoy. I teach English and Geography at Ard School in Trinola in Athy. The cluster I was involved with as part of the CSL's Excellence Through Collaborative Leadership initiative, we decided to research reflective practice and we called our project On Reflection. The other lead educators in the project were Sinead MacDonald from Naas Community College and Thomas Ahern from Slough Conglish in Baltinglass. Our project contributed to promoting the concept of distributed leadership. Initially, we, as the three lead individuals, developed a shared vision for On Reflection. A vision grounded in developing creative, dynamic, and purposeful reflective practice strategies to boost learner autonomy and quell professional burnout. At the next staff meetings in our schools, we informed our colleagues about our project and communicated our vision. From this, we were able to set up teams to devise, test drive, and streamline our reflective innovations. During the first phase of our project, we trialled our strategies, and at the end, we organised a showcase event in the Kildare Education Centre. The event was attended by our principals, deputy principals, colleagues, and our mentor, John T.B. Our guest speaker at the event was Tomás O'Rourke, Director of the Teaching Council, and he spoke to the group about the power of collaboration and reflection. At the event, we also set up stalls to showcase our reflective practice strategies. This was the first time everyone from the 3 schools came together and a real positive mood contagion was felt. That evening, our mentor also helped us to narrow our focus slightly, and this feedback proved crucial. The strategies our teams devised were then distributed across the 3 schools. For example, in our school, a Teach Meet group took on board our strategies, allowing them to permeate throughout the entire school community. We also organised leadership training with Colette Dunning from the PDST, and these proved to be incredibly popular. Clearly, leadership was being distributed, and a shared sense of responsibility for the success of the project was engendered. We have placed student voice and parent voice at the heart of change in a number of our reflective practice strategies, as well as using a dialogic approach to reflect during pertinent educational scenarios such as interdepartmental collaboration and the important transition for students from post-primary to 3rd level. All stakeholders in education became involved in our project, highlighting how distributed leadership was at the core of our work. Due to this interdependency, we were able to successfully move towards a more sustainable and invigorating approach to reflective practice. We also worked closely with a UX, web and product designer over the last year to develop a website to exhibit our project on reflection.ie. On our website, you can discover 12 reflective practice strategies that move beyond the monoculture of the reflective practice journal. It's a sort of pick and mix experience. We've had amazing conversations with educators from all over the country over the last 2 years. We've seen how Irish educators are making huge leaps to embed reflective practice at the heart of their school cultures. Over the course of this initiative, Sinead, Thomas and I have engaged in deep and robust collaboration. We took risks, we stepped outside our comfort zones, and as a result we were able to refocus on our core values in education. This has proven invaluable, especially as the complexities of our ever-changing profession have intensified recently. We have witnessed how reflective practice married with distributed leadership is transformative. It allows a magnified leadership essence rise to the surface. This is needed in these uncharted and challenging times now more than ever. And to finish, a huge thank you to everyone who has helped and supported us over the last 2 years.
On reflection, we felt that our project lent itself very strongly toward promoting the concept of distributed leadership. This project helped involve more staff in leadership positions within their schools. It provided an opportunity for teachers to meet and network and explore how it might improve teaching and learning in our schools with a particular focus on the student voice. We looked at the whole concept of how students could be more involved in a way that would allow for positive changes to happen. For distributed leadership to be effective, we need to build up a network and ensure interdependent interaction and practice rather than individual and independent actions. Each cluster member played a central role in every step of the project. Teachers in the respective schools were involved in facilitating discussion with student groups in our schools. We called as part of our project Reps Meeting Reps, whereby teachers and students work together on areas relating to learning and teaching in their school. This facilitated students in learning and leading their learning and establishing a voice within the school self-evaluation process. As a result, group members noticed the high level of trust involved and a genuine appreciation from students that were being involved in making a contribution towards their own learning. Teachers related their findings back to the staff and wider school community, and were also involved in sharing their experience with colleagues from neighbouring schools, such as our cluster group. Finally, reflective questionnaires were also distributed to students through platforms such as Google Forms in order to allow for feedback from the student community. By doing all the above, we were mobilising leadership expertise at all levels within the school community and generating more opportunity for change, whilst also building the capacity for improvements. Overall, the project has reinforced the importance of distributing leadership roles within the group to maximise efficiency and increase the chance of project success. This progressed to their nurturing of the leadership traits and developing responsibility within students, facilitating their input into their own learning. Each meeting afforded the group an opportunity to share ideas and collaborate towards reaching our goal, supported by reflection on steps taken and how they could be improved going forward. Professional conversations existed within the meetings themselves, but also in feeding into our respective learning and teaching committees. Indeed, the experience gave all staff involved a leadership profile within their school community. It also empowered them to take additional actions, which helped to ensure the student voice has remained central in the present COVID-related context.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Barry, the Deputy Principal in Causeway Comprehensive School, County Kerry. The project that I was the coordinator for was looking at and developing the leadership capacity within our schools. The project was a collaboration between the 8 Kerry ETB post-primary schools, the Centre for School Leadership and the Tree Education Centre. The facilitator for the Centre for School Leadership was Margaret O'Donovan. The project looked at the leadership capacity within our schools and the various areas within the leadership structure in our schools. So we began with the assistant principals. We set out our aims and objectives, we developed sessions, and we looked at the different areas that the assistant principals needed support with. And we got the feedback from our assistant principals. We began using a survey. So our survey asked the assistant principals for the different areas that they felt that they needed more help with, they needed to develop their own leadership capacity in. From this, we developed a series of sessions. What we found after the first session was that the feedback was going to be invaluable for us. The feedback from the first session enabled us to plan our next session. While we had a general guide of where the sessions were going, the feedback was very, very important. It allowed us to gear our sessions towards the needs of the particular group of people. The whole aim of the project was to move the assistant principals in our schools from being task orientated, which may have been the way things were in the past, towards a more leadership orientated within our schools, so that they were part of a leadership team and they weren't just simply over, we'll say, the books or the lockers or whatever the task may have been in the past, so that it was a team. One part that they really enjoyed was the fact that they went to the session and they brought stuff back to their schools, and then the leadership and management team in the school would sit down, they would go back over the session. Things like the development of scenarios was very good. The assistant principals came up with different scenarios, and the principals from the schools met with their deputies and they all came together and came up with scenarios. For example, things that could happen if the assistant principal was acting as principal or deputy in the absence of the principal or the deputy for the day. And then each leadership management team in the school, they sat down, they brainstormed, they looked at the session. Each person got an opportunity to say how they would handle the session. And, it was very important because it highlighted things that, possibly would need to be dealt with in the spur of the moment. And they really found those sessions invaluable. Overall, the project was a great success. I really feel in our old school here that the assistant principals, they've really enjoyed it and they really have gelled as a team. The whole area of their working together, not in isolation, was really important, and it has really come out. We have, as an organisation, have decided to continue the project into a second year, and we're very soon beginning our first session, looking and developing on the areas that were highlighted in the first set of training.
Centres for School Leadership, Excellence through Collaboration, Leadership and Management, Ballyman Vocational School Leadership Cluster Initiative. The name of our project, who was involved and its focus. The title of our project was Voices in Transition, Moving In, Moving Up and Moving On, from Vision to Best Practice, an introduction model for the school community for primary to post-primary and on into the world of further education and work. Research suggests that the transition from primary into post-primary and on into the world of further education and work is a critical time for our youth. Our project addressed these challenges by building a structured network with local primary schools, the secondary school at third level and local industries. The 4 primary schools were Cohill, Empire, Tishinny and Fortney. The secondary school, Ballyman Vocational School, was coordinating the project. The third level, which supported us, was at Loan Institute of Technology, and the businesses were Abbott's, Midland Science, Centre Parks and Hidden Heartlands. Systems level support was provided by the Centre School of Leadership and Carrick-on-Shannon Education Centre. Valuable resources at our doorstep. The key aim of our project was to improve the teaching and learning environment across a range of curriculum areas, particularly STEM subjects. Encourage creativity, innovation and critical thinking through involvement with local industries. Encourage active learning methodologies. These companies come in, provide the workshops, the primary students there, secondary schools there. They're seeing the staff working within the school, their uniforms, their resources, the materials they use in the world of work. It develops transitional skills, fosters the well-being of a student. The stress of transition is reduced for the students when the school and the local industries engage, work collaboratively and build meaningful relationships from the workshops on that day. It promoting the student's voice, builds professional networks among teachers, and develops leadership capacity. The aim of the project were achieved through constant communication, planning, and preparation between all involved, including the students. There was a huge amount of goodwill and cooperation from the schools, primary, and the local industries. The key focus for the project was to organise a series of workshops. We used concepts from project management theory throughout the process. The workshops were designed to include active engagement for all pupils. The learning was based on real-life activities of the industries, which greatly enhanced students' curiosity and engagement. The first series of workshops took place in the secondary school Ballymahan. After the workshops, the teachers, students, principals, all worked together on reflective practices to see how we could improve. Satisfactory levels were high. Describe the leadership aspect of the project. The project facilitated leadership development among staff and pupils. Involvement in the project contributed to a culture of collaboration and creativity in the promotion of the teaching and learning. The primary focus of the project was to address the anxiety levels from students feel from the transition process, moving from primary to secondary to third level and on to the world of work. These needs were addressed throughout by the leadership school development. This is achieved by building relationships with our schools and with the wider community. Individual staff members involved in leading the project were empowered to take on and carry out leadership roles. We were able to build professional networks with other schools and with local industries. We will use the positive experience to engage in future collaboration projects will be a benefit to our own leadership development, because we'll learn from them, they'll learn from us, and will also the benefit to the students' learning. The project also facilitated the professional development of the teachers involved through the participation of the Centre of School Leadership Support Workshops. The teachers involved also benefit from the support from the local education centre and the networking with learning from the experiences of other leadership clusters, listening to their ideas. The leadership development also assisted by the support of the Centre of Schools Leadership Facilitator, Jody O'Connor. He helped us through the entire process. My own leadership skills were greatly enhanced through the participation of the project. It was time-consuming. There was a lot of challenges, but it was a very positive experience. It could not have been achieved without the support of the Principal, Rosemary Johnson, Deputy Principal, Siobhan Cullen, Event Coordinator, Fiona Rooney, the Principals of the 4 primary schools, Catherine Keenan, Yvonne Maguire, Brie Glynn, Aidan Gloughlin, AIT, Midland Science, Centre Parks, Fáilte Ireland.
My name is Dee Lloyd, and I was the lead coordinator of the Kildare cluster. And our project set out to explore the use of learning outcomes in the new junior cycle specifications. My role as a lead coordinator of the project was essentially to motivate a team of people to work towards a common goal and fulfil the aims of the project. I would say that the project had a collaborative leadership style in that we had a common and shared understanding, responsibility and purpose of the project. Something that was very important was to keep the focus of the project and to keep the flow of communication moving, especially in a really busy school year when sometimes there were weeks between face-to-face meeting. It was important to have good records of what the project had decided and what the next steps were, and keeping up regular contact with the other schools through email and also by scheduling regular face-to-face meetings with the full team. It was challenging to lead a team when there were 3 different schools involved, because I had to consider other cultures and other leadership styles, as well as focusing on my own leadership development and motivating the team towards achieving a common aim. It was important that senior management were fully involved in the project, which meant they were kept informed and were present at regular meetings. I think this allowed them to really understand the challenges of learning outcomes in the classroom, and this enabled them then to support the teachers in the project. In fact, just having senior management and teachers in the room working on a common aim for this project, I think that was a really positive thing. It was very supportive. and it built up, I think, a trust and a mutual understanding. Ensuring teachers had a role in this meant that they felt ownership of the project and that there was a real value and purpose to it. The main challenge we encountered in the process of this project was moving discussions onwards towards the aims of the project in a positive way. And when we got stuck, I think we used the process of collaboration and discussion in order to overcome that. A key element in the leadership of this project was to be able to have the courage to take decisive action and to change the direction of the project. We set out to create a toolkit to explore learning outcomes, and in the end we settled on process over product. We settled on a reflective template that would bring about more discussion and collaboration. Overall, I learned a lot about my leadership skills being the lead coordinator in this project, and I think that the real richness of this project for everyone involved was the collaboration between the three schools. I think it was a very rich experience for everybody, and I think we all got something out of it.
The name of our project was Transitioning with the Times, and it involved ourselves, Abbey Vocational School as the lead school, and three local primary schools, namely Scoil Lenavisa in Clonmard, Glebe National School, Scoil Ruagus Nula, and St. Peter's Mount Charles. Our focus really was to ease the transition process for primary school students and teachers in a fun and engaging way. While at the same time, this cross-curricular project did involve numeracy and PE, while using technology for assessment, planning, collaboration, communication, and reflection. If I was to describe the leadership aspect of the project, I'd probably use three words to describe it a little further, namely how we communicated, how we collaborated, and also how distributed leadership was evident. So how we communicated, how we collaborated, shared understanding of the project and how we were going to administer that, so that we were all singing off the same hymn sheet. We co-developed material, shared resources, and basically the biggest challenge here was, I felt, developing a belief that the result was greater than the sum of the parts. That the result was greater than the sum of the parts. In terms of communication, the establishment of professional networks, sometimes working in the dark, I'm not sure what's happening in primary school and vice versa. So it was brilliant to establish those professional networks and to listen to good practice and to share good practice. I thought that was a valuable piece of the project, and it allows us to be able to listen a little bit better to, when we look at the reflections, when we look at the feedback from students, how we can support each other and how we can support the students more effectively, and it's empowering in that respect. The distributed leadership, well, we begin to respect each other's strengths and could lean on those when the time was required. So there's an appreciation there of what strengths people are bringing to the project, and to go to those people if needed. Also the capacity to critique our own work. Is it as good as it could have been? Could have we done it better? And so that was evident too in our reflections, and when we sit down and evaluate how effective the program was, and also where would we go from this point on? Okay, thanks for listening.
Welcome to our CSL project, Cracking the Code on Junior Cycle Jargon. This community-based project includes members from the 4 second-level schools in Clonmel, Presentation Secondary School, CBS High School, CTI and Loreto Clonmel. This project explores the value of distributed leadership and reflective practice, and is supported by local industry, third-level institutions and second-level support services. In practice, this project has given us the platform to engage with each other and has enhanced our collaboration for the benefit of our school communities. At our initial meeting, it was decided the 4 schools would work together on the area of the new junior cycle. With this aim in mind, it was decided that we would have to consult the stakeholders in our respective schools. Our original aim was to create a shared CBA calendar. However, through the consultation with all stakeholders, it became clear that there was a huge amount of ambiguity regarding the terminology surrounding the junior cycle, and so began our project, Cracking the Code on Junior Cycle Jargon. The project's main aim was to provide clarity to students, parents, guardians, teachers, board of managements and stakeholders regarding the new junior cycle. As a group, we met to create a shared PowerPoint presentation which highlighted the key areas of the new junior cycle. The PowerPoint explained each area in a clear and concise manner, which is understood by all. This resource was used by all schools when information was given to students, teachers, parents, guardians about the new junior cycle in the academic year 2019-20. This resource, which was designed, has highlighted the benefits of partnerships and has indeed strengthened relationships among schools within our community. The feedback on this new synchronised approach has been overwhelmingly positive.
There were a number of learning opportunities, both intended and unintended, over the 18-month duration of the project. From the outset, we discovered through our survey exactly where the gaps were in knowledge about junior cycle amongst all stakeholders. Conversations, both formal and informal, between different staff in different schools allowed the sharing of information and a greater understanding of everything to do with junior cycle. At first, we were unsure of the benefits of linking with industry. However, after a site visit, it became clear that both organisations can and should learn from each other. Example, the model of a 5-minute stand-up meeting is a popular initiative that has already been used by many of us. As schools are different and have different perspectives, we learned it is okay to be flexible and slightly change the direction a project is headed in. What is important is the process, not necessarily the outcomes. Allowing those not already in management positions the opportunity to develop leadership capacity will in turn facilitate the development of the school. What seemed an onerous task at the outset had clear aims, was focused and achievable. This allowed us to work on something that we as schools benefited from, but will also benefit the town of Clonmel for many years to come.
The leadership aspect of the project was multifaceted. The project has allowed members of staff who were not in senior management to come together and work in a manner that assists and enhances the working life of all those in our schools who will and take subjects and short courses in junior cycle education. It has had the following effects in the following areas. In teaching and learning, it provides all school stakeholders with an introduction into the world of junior cycle. It aims to simplify and explain the acronyms and methods of instruction involved with junior cycle. In collaboration, the biggest undertaking of this project was getting teaching staff together from the 4 second-level schools in Clonmel. Once a working group was established, ideas and workload were quickly undertaken in a very collegial manner. In reflective practice, the original aim of the project was to develop a standardised calendar for all CBAs in the 4 schools. However, this became apparent very quickly that this was not practical or achievable due to differences in subjects being offered. The group then decided to change approach and develop a presentation that could be used in each school to provide information for those new to junior cycle and make the transition that bit easier. In professional conversations, many more conversations and communications occurred across the 4 schools and with business. A trip to Boston Scientific planned to allow the group to see management structures and other settings that could be implemented in a school environment. We look forward to the next phase of the project and continued collaboration between the schools in Clonmel.
Ballo year go lig. Dahim a chaigus anim dom, agus tá mé stúrthór ar ionad dacis Winechaim, agus tá mé chahíirlach ar ionad dacis agus takeíochta na Héireann. Agus ar ceann na hagriaachta sin, ba bhaid lom mo chogáirdes a ggóil live a socht an tríon obair agus torú na Héibre sin tar éis sibh páirtead leacu i mrislí cinnearachta CSL 2019-2020. I do want to extend my congratulations to you all on the phenomenal commitment of time, effort and energy through your engagement with the leadership clusters all across Ireland in the school year 2019-2020. I, as chairperson of ESCI, the Education Support Centre of Ireland, am very proud of my organisation's role in the facilitation of these clusters which brought together teachers from across school sectors and school communities to work collaboratively. The aim of this project was to build leadership capacity across our school system, and I'm confident that that has been the case in the majority, if not all, of the clusters throughout the school year. I can speak to my own experience, having been involved in the local clusters here in Monaghan, and recount to you the fantastic conversations, professional dialogue that took place across tables, debates at times, and the new voices that emerged throughout those discourses. The experiential learning opportunities that arose for teachers throughout the project as well added greatly to my experience. These networks and clusters should act as a spur to enhance these relationships, to strengthen education communities across schools and across sectors, and build capacity within our school communities and networks, particularly amidst the phenomenal challenges which schools currently face, but also to strengthen communities as we brace ourselves for the challenges which are to come in the future. The essential purpose of the Education Leadership Cluster is to promote opportunities for learning and growth for those cohort of teachers who take part, but also the learners in which the schools in which they work in. I witness these opportunities as they present themselves and watch colleagues grow in confidence and maturation and flourish as a result of these experiences. I believe that schools and classrooms are better as a result of your collaboration. In many cases, learner experiences were directly impacted and enhanced, and teachers now have new experiences and confidence which to draw on as they proceed in their professional journey. Morocco score, Mulam Gaptin Arish, agus Asulam Ganahni and Shiv on Luke agus an Tarava, Awana le de Kajigris, agus Koai Brula Kiela. Guim Gapra or Ivamakan Shaw, agus Na Jenny Jarmad, Le Kiela is Treshashin. Harkan Unidakash agus Taki Glahern, Guramila Mayamagav.
Hi everyone, my name is Ida Connolly and I am principal at Davidstown Primary School. We're a cluster of 5 schools, 3 primary schools, Rathnurenes, Kiltinianes, my school Davidstown, along with 2 secondary schools, Colosh, Breed and Scoirthy and Good Counsel College in New Ross. The aim of our project was to enable our students to have a successful transition from primary school to secondary school. The cluster consisted of Tara Nolan, our cluster coordinator, Deirdre Byrne, Rathnurenes, Mary Carroll, the former principal of Kilteely National School, Bridget Kennedy, Good Counsel College, Aidan O'Brien, Deputy Principal of Good Counsel College, Niamh Duggan, Closh Breed, and Ciara Sullivan, Principal of Closh Breed. We'd also like to give special thanks to our CSL facilitator, Anne McQuillan, and Lorraine O'Gorman, the Director of County Wexford Education Centre. The initial focus of our study was to be on homework, as the primary school experiences that parental concern focus on homework and coping with the increased amount of homework between 6th class and 1st year. We initially planned to discuss and explore this issue with our secondary school partners. However, following the initial discussions, it was becoming quite apparent that homework was not usually a marker as success or having a difficult transition, and it was in fact more of a complex issue. Both of our secondary schools highlighted organisational skills as being the indicator of success in transitioning to secondary school. At this point, we decided to survey parents, pupils and teachers of the first year pupils using online surveys and focus groups. And again, the results did reinforce the fact that we needed to focus on organisational skills. So once we had done that, we revised the title and the aim of our project to promote positive attitudes and behaviours by developing organisational skills during the transitional phase from primary to post-primary school. We identified the items that were within our scope. There were timetables, journals, books, school rules, subject overview, lockers, time, orientation of the school building, identifying people and systems. Some of the deliverables that we looked at included creating a video for incoming students, including a video created by the pupils of the secondary school itself, an induction pack containing the rules of the school, a map of the school, and what to do in different scenarios. For example, if you're late, communication between 6th class and 1st year, organising books, folders, timetable and copies so that everything is colour coded and easy to use and retrieve from the lockers. We also looked at practicing using the timetables and the journals before they even reach secondary school. We then decided that we would look at surveying the pupils in 6th class before they began the transition programme. So before the open nights had taken place, or we'd had visits from the principals, or the transition programme had run in school, we then would survey the same pupils again following the completion of the programme. This project was very successful, and even in the midst of a pandemic we were able to prepare our students for transition to secondary school, and both of the secondary schools in the cluster created videos which are both available on their school website. Regarding the leadership aspect of this project, we had 3 primary schools and 2 secondary schools based in 2 different towns. None of us had worked together before, and many of us had never even met. Through a series of professional conversations where each of us sought out everyone's ideas, opinions, we were able to identify the central tenet of the project, and it was nothing like the initial idea that we thought it would be. From identifying this, we then worked together to devise a strategy to achieve our aim. The effective collaboration among the schools was evident. Each of our meetings were productive, we were engaged in reflective practice and shared practice. Group discussions were productive and effective. Roles and responsibilities were discussed, clearly identified and developed. The outcome of this project can easily be applied to the wider system, as items within the scope of our project are common to all primary schools. We also discussed how there were many other areas for collaboration. It became apparent to us during the process that there's a disconnect between the primary and secondary school, specifically in relation to the content of the curriculum between 6th class and first year. Both secondary schools specifically mentioned the continuity of the math curriculum between 6th class and first year as being of particular interest. It was a worthwhile experience, and we learned how open and enthusiastic both secondary schools and primary schools are to working together, not only to ease the process of transition, but also to work together in the future on other challenges facing pupils and schools.
The title of our project was to build leadership capacity within our teachers. Our cluster involved 3 post-primary schools, Coláiste Pobal Tanta, Castleknock Community College and Hansfield Educate Together Secondary School. We formed a core team between all 3 schools. This involved myself, Mairead Maguire, as cluster coordinator, Mary-Trace Kilmartin, our CSL facilitator, Maureen Nicalca from Dublin West Education Centre, and the project was also heavily supported by management and lead teachers in all 3 schools. Liam Walsh, principal from Coláiste Pobal Tanta, supported us, as did our deputy principals from Castleknock Community College, Carmel O'Neill, Christina Clark and Mairead O'Halloran. Bernie Judge, the principal at Hansfield Educate Together Secondary School, and their lead teacher Lorraine McCann were also involved. Among this core team, we also involved 20 teachers from all 3 schools. Our core team organised a number of workshops, as you can see here. All teachers involved in the project attended workshops on the topics of team building, who am I as leader, project planning, building teams for change, what does success look like, teams in business, and we culminated our project with the discussion about what we had learnt about leadership. Our teachers got the opportunity to showcase what they learnt in their own schools. We did this through individual school projects. Castleknock Community College looked at developing the oral language at junior cycle, Coláiste Pobal Tanta developed a junior cycle reflective journal, and Hansfield Educate Together Secondary School developed a wellbeing programme. This project has enabled leadership in our teachers by demonstrating huge commitment from 20 teachers and the leadership teams in all 3 schools from December 2018 to May 2020. Individual schools committed to organising and attending leadership workshops and running their own school projects. Communication skills were also tested. Teachers developed confidence to update other staff and present at staff meetings. They worked on individual school projects together in small teams, and this led to many rich discussions and deep listening for learning. Collaboration was also a key feature here. The core team collaborated regularly, teachers built links with each other, and lasting professional relationships have been developed between all 3 schools. Teamwork was always encouraged. Group work activities formed part of all workshops, and teachers experienced project planning, brainstorming, sharing experiences together, and so on. Creativity and innovation came to the fore in individual schools, and this is evident in the individual school projects that were produced in each school. Now, as the project closes, teachers have gained more confidence to step up into leadership positions in their schools. We are delighted that many have done this throughout the course of this project, and we wish them all of the best in the future. For me, the role of coordinator has been very, very enjoyable. I got to develop links with 2 local schools and our community itself. I also feel very lucky to be afforded the opportunity to create links with various speakers, for example from the Teaching Council, from Maynooth University and so on, and I'm looking forward to maintaining these links and building more over the next few years. I absolutely loved organising meetings and chatting to the core team to see the innovative projects being developed in their schools and how we could support each other when needed. I saw many other project training days from all around Ireland. There was lots and lots of collaboration, sharing ideas, and people were very motivated by each other's projects, and that was great to see. I also feel that I myself have gained more confidence, and I know now that I can lead a project in my school and between schools in the community. And I'm very excited to lead similar projects into the future. We had many key takeaways from this project. Leadership capacity was always key, and different levels of leadership were involved, from teachers not in formal leadership positions in their schools to school principals. We had coordinators, we had project leads in each school, and it really was a project where there was learning for all. We have built successful links between 3 neighbouring schools now in our community, and we think this will be invaluable for future collaboration. We have also formed successful links in the community itself, and we plan to maintain and expand this list in the future. Lots of collaboration and sharing happened between teams in individual schools, between all of the teachers involved in the cluster, and nationally with other clusters throughout Ireland. We found this to be very motivating, and it helped us to keep momentum on our project.
Hello, my name is Mary Marm. I was the cluster coordinator for the Port Leash cluster, looking at the project entitled Embedding Cross-Sector Reflective Practices.
My name is Sharon Carroll, and I'm the lead teacher in St. Coleman's National School in Stradbally for this project.
My name is Kieran Delaney, and I'm the lead teacher for Haywood Community School in Ballincollig.
As you can see in this project, there was 3 schools, 2 secondary schools and 1 primary school. Along the way, we were helped and supported by our CSL facilitator, Des Cullen, Dr. Conor Mellon from the Teaching Council, and Elma Kent from JCT. Today, we were asked to reflect on the leadership capacity of the project, how it was built, and if we would change anything. To do so, we're going to use one of the reflective methods that we found was very effective in our classrooms, KWL.
So what we knew, the value of reflective practice as a learning tool in achieving and maintaining quality teaching and learning for educators and students alike. At post-primary level, the phased introduction of the new junior cycle placed a lot of emphasis on student self-directed learning and reflection. The value and importance of student voice and using it to inform our decisions throughout the course of the project. As leaders, the need to have a clear direction and purpose for the project. The value in having a strong core team and working collaboratively. And communication will be a key component, as well as having the support of senior management. And establishing buy-in will be a key to success of any project in the school.
What we did to build leadership capacity. In order to facilitate the leadership of the project, a core team of 3 lead teachers was established, 1 from each school, myself from Port Leash, Sharon from St. Coleman's National School, and Kieran from Haywood Community School. In each of our schools then, we formed a core team of teachers around us who shared responsibility for the leadership of the project. In the secondary school, the approach the project took was moving within 2 phases. In phase 1, the core teachers of the project worked on embedding reflection within their own classroom and reflecting on that experience and sharing it with each other. In phase 2, the learning stopped from phase 1, informed their development of resources to support the embedding of reflection across the school. In phase 2, the teachers worked as a liaison person for other departments and as a leader within their own subject department, embedding reflection in the classroom.
In St. Coleman's National School, we set up our committee using at least one of the teachers in each of our class streams. We found that in the primary school, reflective practice in the classroom and among our teachers in our own planning was far more plentiful and embedded in the primary school setting. So the role of this committee was to update the resources that already existed within our classrooms, and then to reflect on all of those strategies. The group met regularly to discuss the methods being used in our classroom and on our own personal experiences. The main focus in Phase 2 was in 5th and 6th class, where the teachers here collaboratively developed a plan to specifically teach language associated with reflection, and we designed a reflective journal that pupils became very familiar with, and the main purpose to prepare them for their transition to secondary school.
By distributing leadership of the project in this way, it provided all participants the opportunity to further develop their leadership skills. The opportunities provided to each that enabled this development are summarised here. What we learned. Would we approach the project differently? Yes and no. No, we would leave the leadership of the project the same in that it was distributed amongst each school. But what we would change would be that in the early stages of planning, we would engage more in investigation to see where each school is at in terms of reflection.
The timing of the projects would change that we would introduce and implement Phase 1 of the projects at the latter part of the school year, and then full rollout across the whole school at the beginning of the new school year.
However, it was a huge benefit to have the opportunity to collaborate with both primary and secondary schools. We learned how the different schools in our education system work. We found that it was very important now going forward that we keep these lines of communication between our primary and secondary schools open. As future leaders, it provides us with insights as to how we would approach projects like this in the future.
Hello, my name is Caroline Madigan, and our project was called the Cross-Curricular Collaborative Cluster. This involved 3 primary schools, ourselves, Ballinagar National School, Fairymount National School, French Park National School, County Roscommon, linking with the local play school and with St. Nathan's Secondary School in Ballardreen. The focus of the project was developing themes in a cross-curricular format in each school, and then extending those activities at the lower end, working with the pupils in the play school at times, and sometimes with the pupils in the secondary school. Each teacher was responsible for leading the topic out in his or her own classroom, thereby enhancing their individual leadership skills. By planning the topic with colleagues from other schools before we started off, much collaboration happened, and we worked as a group prior to starting each theme. We set up a WhatsApp group where we could share our resources and our ideas as we worked through the topic. We visited each other's schools, as well as the secondary school and play school, and teachers' leadership skills were greatly enhanced over the 2 years as they grew in confidence, sharing ideas and skills, sharing CPD sessions together. 6 themes were developed over the 2 years, allowing for such enjoyable learning experiences for us all, stretching our teaching far beyond the textbooks and allowing for great creativity and project work. We started to do a lot of work with STEM work, and there was huge work done on transfer links from play school to primary school and from primary to secondary school, as the pupils got to visit different departments of the secondary school depending on the theme. These trips proved extremely beneficial for alleviating the pupils' fears about moving on, and how thankful we are now in the light of COVID that this informal transition took place. Because we were aiming to improve our use of STEM, we were able to purchase new resources and borrow some from the Education Centre, like the Lego We Do kits, the Isaac 9 cubes and all of that. So all in all, by focusing on a topic, whether it was travel and transport, space, water, food, buildings, there was great linkage in the work being covered, a great sharing of ideas and resources within and across schools, a great opportunity for teachers to allow their individual strengths to shine and to be shared, a chance for great homeschool works and relationships to be built up, a great chance for differentiation and addressing multiple intelligences as pupils could choose activities that appealed to their individual learning styles. The levels of engagement soared when we were working on a topic, and all the teachers commented on their own levels of enthusiasm and relishing the opportunities to relinquish the textbooks, to source their own materials, to allow for greater pupil voice, to share lessons with fellow colleagues, all of these enhancing their individual leadership skills, giving them a heightened sense of autonomy, merged with the professional responsibility to do the best that they could with each particular theme. We were asked at the end of the scheme to consider what might we have done differently, or how might one approach this initiative in any other way. And having consulted with my colleagues on these, we have a few ideas that have emerged. Number one, we thought the initial time frame of 2 years, maybe could be brought back to 1 year, as there's such many changes in staffing and personnel, and it's really like starting all over again in that case. Secondly, we thought that the initial emphasis on linking with the business might not always work. In our case, and with this project, it didn't really allow for very much of this, with the exception of a visit to the Fresh Today plant in Longford when we were doing work on food. That's where the children's lunches are made. So maybe it's not always feasible or appropriate for each cluster to make links with a business really by the virtue of their nature. We also thought that suggested taking maybe a leadership domain from the LAOS document and using this as a focus for each theme. Every school then and individual teachers could measure their progress along this domain over the course of the topic of the year. Going forward, the people in the group felt that it might be beneficial if somebody from CSL had come to visit the whole school, the whole cluster, at the beginning, about collaboration and transformational leadership. To show how this can work within schools and across schools. This could prove to be a great starting point, a great kickstart initiative if everybody could do this or have this meeting within school time. Also, we felt by teachers and principals knowing the strengths of their teachers, how they work, what their passions are, what their areas of interest are, that people will teach in a better and a more energetic way when they're teaching to their own strengths. So moving forward, I know we think it would be very difficult and challenging to engage with such projects in the COVID restrictions, where we're now working more in isolation and depending so much on technology. We're working in a very different school context. And I know I can only speak for all of us involved in this cluster when I say that we're so glad that we got to do so much, that we could maximise our learning and leadership opportunities as much as we did in the past 2 school years. Let's hope that projects such as this can be rolled out again in the future. Thank you.
So the title of our CSL project was Collaborative Practices in Team Teaching. Schools involved are St Augustine's College Dungarvan, the Mercy, Waterford, and Ordscommodation Dungarvan. The focus of our CSL project was to empower staff to enter into a more collaborative approach to teaching and learning, and to help develop confidence and leadership skills, and to create a collaborative environment in schools. On reflection, the biggest difficulties or that we faced were time constraints. It would have been helpful to have a showcase of previous work that the CSL projects had been, and again the time limits of being able trying to get 3 schools meeting in an area where there was a 30 miles between one school and the next. Thanks very much.
Hello, my name is Jane Miller and I'm one of the teacher leaders here in Compey College. We worked on the project with Niamh Hennigan in School Breda in Clane, and our cluster leader is Sinead Rowland in School Borough in Clane. Our group tried to establish effective presentation and group work skills to aid the transition from primary into secondary. As team leaders, we built our own leadership capacity. We collaborated on an ongoing basis with our teacher leader colleagues in our cluster schools. We organised and attended meetings as teacher leaders. We also developed all of our own project management plans, such as our scope statement, our Gantt chart, and our VASI plans. We liaised and consulted with our facilitator, from whose leadership experience we gained essential guidance. We learned much about our leadership perspective and how to focus all of our participants on our shared goal as well. Each teacher leader led their own group within the school, identifying the strengths and areas in which they could build their leadership skills. We learned how to adapt our project and its focus with unforeseen challenges, such as some first schools withdrew from the project. When we were chairing our meetings with the school teams, we had to make sure that progress was taking place in a meaningful way as well. We created opportunities for our colleagues to gain leadership skills and responsibilities in regards to reporting on the project to management, to the Board of Management, and also to Parents Association and to staff at meetings as well. We tried to adhere to our Gantt plan as best as we can in regards to the timeline of the project. We completed one full action cycle of our project and reflected on its success, and when planning our second action cycle as well. We engaged in ongoing reflective practices, concentrating on the progress of the project as well as the leadership skills being developed in the project too. And we also delivered meetings on looking at our schools document and how teachers could actually focus on specific areas of their own leadership that needed further practice too. As team members, they attended ongoing meetings. They also attended cluster meetings, and they committed a lot of their time and their effort to this project too. They collaborated with cluster colleagues in devising group work recommendations for teachers. They also looked at group work lesson plans, and also they developed research skill lesson plans too. They reported to management on the project, to board of management, and also to Parents Association and to staff at meetings as well. They engaged in reflective practices when critiquing their group work lessons, and they also led the reflective discussions on group work lesson plans and adjusted these group work recommendations and lesson plans accordingly as well. And they engaged in ongoing reflections of their own leadership based on the Looking at Our Schools document too. If we were to do things differently, we didn't quite utilise businesses, and we could have better utilised our education centre. We felt kind of out of our depth in regards to this area because we didn't know with whom in business we could consult with or contact with and how best to make use of their expertise. And this is probably because of our own inexperience with networking and identifying ways in which the experience of others could actually benefit our project and our leadership. And maybe as teachers, we're too insular in regards to not looking beyond our schools for inspiration and guidance. Time management and the logistics of actually organising and running a project that encompassed so many different sections was a challenge, and perhaps we could improve that in the future. And while we did try to embed reflective practice into our project, we possibly could have ensured that there is this more structured method of ongoing reflection took place and was perhaps overseen by us as team leaders. And we found that some teachers did engage with reflective elements of the project, but others maybe in regards to a tick the box exercise. And then finally, as team leaders, we did tend to direct the leadership opportunities for our colleagues, and instead we should probably have encouraged them to devise their own ways of building their leadership capacities. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Blonna Tennyson, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of our cluster. We had 3 schools involved in our cluster, namely Allen National School Kilmeague, Sculvrida at Garvan, and St Bridget's Primary School from Kildare Town. The title of our project was A Celebration of Inclusion Within Our School Community. Our leader was Peter Coakley, and our coordinator was Sabrina Fulham. The overarching focus of our project was to engage ourselves as learners to better understand what is considered best practice in an inclusive school, while simultaneously developing our leadership capacity through collaboration, cooperation, and ongoing reflection. Our focus expanded throughout this process and concluded in an exploration of inclusion through a wider lens, resulting in a shift from the traditional understanding of inclusion to one that encapsulated aspects of different types of inclusion within our respective school communities. Allen National School, firstly, their focus was on creating a positive school environment for staff and pupils. For the staff, a sense of community was promoted by a session from Jacinta Kit. Staff members from the cluster were also invited to attend. To consolidate the positive messages received from Jacinta, an art therapy workshop was then organised to support staff well-being. For the pupils, attention was directed to the physical environment of the school, which resulted in the sourcing of accessible picnic benches and basketball hoops for all. To raise awareness in relation to inclusion in sport, Olympian Gary Messett coordinated a workshop for the pupils. Wellbeing Week culminated the project focus, which included activities for staff and pupils, yoga classes for the staff, daily mile for staff and pupils, and the creation of a kindness tree. For Sculvrida at Garvan, the focus was then on creating a more inclusive school environment for the children. Creating a school culture that promotes positive mental health was to the fore. And so, the process was commenced to achieve our Amber Flag. The focus will continue long beyond this project, that is an eagerness to create a safe, positive and healthy attitude towards general physical and mental health and well-being of all members of our school community. For Sculvry, the primary school in Kildare Town, their focus was on cultural inclusion. St Bridget's Primary School boasts a student population of over 1,000 children. Their project sought to develop further how they can represent and include all students in its diverse school community. An inclusion policy was created which set out to ensure the equality, fairness and justice for all pupils and staff. St Bridget's commitment to creating a positive school culture of mutual trust and respect and shared accountability among all stakeholders was reiterated. Furthermore, a week of cultural activities was held in February of 2020 to showcase projects the 3rd and 4th class children had completed on cultural diversity at St Bridget's. The whole school community, along with parents and members of the local community, assembled to celebrate and endorse the value of diversity to enrich the school's culture. Moreover, the children enjoyed visits from guest speakers who offered very engaging conversations about their native cultures, food tasting exhibitions and native dance workshops. Cultural inclusion is now a lived experience in school life at St Bridget's Primary School, and work will continue to ensure that all stakeholders feel valued, supported and respected within the school community. To sum up, individually and collectively, the cluster participants and colleagues had the opportunity to reflect on and give explicit consideration to an understanding of inclusion. While each representative school explored inclusion in different ways, it is important to emphasise that the central focus of our cluster project was to explore ways in which a safe, positive and just inclusive environment can be created for all.
Hello, my name is Aoife Harron. I'm a teacher in St Paul's Secondary School in Updraird in County Galway, and I was part of the team that were doing a project entitled Bridging the Gaps. So this project was a collaboration between ourselves, St Paul's Secondary School, and a number of the local feeder schools, the primary schools who would feed into us. So the other schools in question were our lead school, Scoil Cumming Agus Catriona National School in Updraird. There was also St Annan's National School in Roscahill, Sculmore National School in Derryglen, there was Calmanook National School in Roscahill and Tiernakilla in Mam. So basically we all got together and we put a project together with the idea of helping 6th class students transition from primary school to secondary school. And how this was done was basically looking at the needs of the students through surveys, asking them questions through surveys and finding out what the areas were that were causing most concern for the students in terms of transitioning to secondary school. So basically how we ran the project was by collaborating with obviously our cluster facilitator, Steve Lane, who was fantastic, and we got some external expert support from Breda Kine. So with everyone involved in the project, some growth mindset lessons were put together, and these lessons were carried out with 6th class students over a number of weeks and months in 6th class. So when we started originally, it was towards the end of the school year, and that was one of the I suppose issues that we identified as something that we could do differently. We feel that it would be more beneficial in the future if we were to start the project earlier. So if we were to start the lessons with the students in 6th class earlier in the year, so as to allow for more time and to allow for, I suppose, just more of an exploration of the lessons in resilience and in growth mindset that they had learned, I suppose, to put them into practice a little bit more, the skills that the students learned through the growth mindset lessons. And one of the things that the students did at the end of their project in 6th class was to do the June challenge. So the June challenge was an opportunity for students in 6th class to put into practice the skills that they had learned. So for example, some people might have chosen to focus on honing skills in a particular sport. Some people might have picked a musical instrument to learn. Some people might have picked a particular drawing to practice. And the idea was that you would dedicate a certain number of time each week or each day perhaps to practicing these skills, and at the end of the month look at how far you've come. And basically it's helping students to learn from error, to learn from failure, to learn from mistakes, and to see how they can get better through looking at errors and failure, and to see failure as an opportunity to grow and to develop. Overall, we honestly found that the project worked really, really well. As the secondary school collaborating teacher, I did a follow-up survey with the students in first year. So it was just around Christmas in first year, I did a follow-up survey where I asked a number of questions to the students, and the feedback that they gave was fantastic. So just as an example, some of the questions that were asked, or there were statements given, and the students were to respond either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. And I think some of the most, significant findings were that one of the areas that they had been worried about was their confidence to face, their ability to face more challenging classwork as they went through first year. So one of the statements given was, I feel confident in my ability to face more challenging classwork as the year goes on. And 83% of students agreed that they felt more confident to face more challenging classwork as the year went on. So that was a very positive finding. And overall, the last question that was asked, or the last statement that was given, I am enjoying my experience of secondary school, and 95% of students agreed with that. So those two findings were particularly significant for us. In terms of what we would do differently next time, we would say start earlier, because the more time we have to dedicate to this, I think the better. So definitely to start earlier in the year, and we're excited to continue with the project in the future.